I've got a denim jacket here that is designed to work for everyone. So this is actually for my son, but it also fits me really well. It's got a drop shoulder with this type of sleeve. I'll be showing you how to set it in on the flat while avoiding the bulk that you get under the arm here, as well as other practical sewing aspects. You can make one yourself. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and you've already seen a pattern review and sewing tutorial about the moss jacket from Helen's Closet, and in that one I didn't really share how to sew the sleeves in on the flat and the side seams. Well, that's coming in today because today's pattern has a similar feature here, although it has a lot of other different features as well. And this is the Ilford jacket from Friday Pattern Company. This is a pattern I've sewn for Patreon a few months ago, I think in April. I've had it on standby for such a long time, just for silly reasons like I couldn't find buttons. When you look at the website and the pattern listing, you'll see that the jacket has been styled on both men and women. I think you'll find items like this in the shops that will work for either or as well. The main difference is where you put your buttons, because this does have a button down feature. If you like yours traditionally on the woman's side, you will do your buttonholes on the right placket, and vice versa for men. So I think that is one way you can tell, but otherwise these features are pretty standard. Anyone can wear them. You have a really nice collar. I already have shown you how to sew this collar in a separate video already on the channel, the easiest collar you can sew. This is how the thumbnail looks. I was actually sewing the Ilford jacket in that specific tutorial, but this technique you will find in a lot of jacket patterns, so I wanted to have it on its own sort of thing as a reference, because there are other jacket patterns that I'll be referring to that technique later on, because it's pretty universal. So other than having this collar and the button down feature, one aspect that makes it easier to sew is that you have an integrated facing. So the section that gets folded under here is included in the front pattern piece, so you don't have to cut a separate one, sew it on, you just fold it in. So that makes it nice. And you have two lengths here on the pattern. They're all on the same pattern piece, one that's just shorter, one that's longer. I think it's super easy to customize because this is a boxier straight fit, so you don't need to use a specific shorten and lengthen line to keep any shapes. You know, you can just add or take away at the hem if you want to, and that's what I've done. Now this jacket specifically was made for my son, so a lot of customization and decisions about how it turned out in the end are his decision, because you know, when you sew for someone you want to make it like they want it, right? Not like I want it. So just pointing it out, it is for my son, but you will see me wearing it as well because it also fits me. So I just wanted to show you how it looks on me and on my son. Other than the length options, you can also choose sleeve types. So you'll find two different pattern pieces. One is an easier type of sleeve that has a little bit more volume and it's just a sleeve with a hem, nothing different there. And then the other sleeve option is a little more tapered here, and you have a placket with a cuff. And when there's a simple version and a version that's a little more involved, I usually sew the most involved one when I'm sewing a tutorial for Patreon, because I want the lovely people there to get as much as they can from my content there that is exclusive, you know. The other way that you can customize your Ilford jacket is with the pockets. So you won't just have one standard type of shape for pockets or whatever. You'll find lots of shapes. You can use flaps or not. You can put them on the chest, on the hips or not. You have one that's slightly angled that you can put on the hips. So there's a lot you can do there. Because this is for my son, I showed him all the pockets, and he definitely wanted the chest pockets and the hip pockets with rounded flaps. So if I was making it for myself, I would probably not use the chest pockets. I just put them on the hips. But because it's for him, he gets all the pockets he wants, top stitched, all of that. And now the back is just one piece cut on the fold. And I wanted to add something to that just for decoration, just to have a bit more fun really. So I added my own yoke. I didn't do a double layer, I didn't do a burrito method, and that's due to the fabric choice. You know, talk about that in a sec. So I just did a single layer. I just wanted it there for some extra top stitching and just a little extra detail on the back to make it a little bit more interesting. But you can make it without the yoke, of course. It's not part of the original design. So for fabrics, you can use structured fabrics. You know, you could use wool flannel, suiting, canvas, linen, corduroy, all these types of fabrics are a bit more structured, a bit heavier. They are going to work perfectly. My son just wanted a basic black denim jacket. I looked in my denim collection because I have a lot of denim in there, and I found one that is not black. It's not gray either. I think it's in between. It's like a dark gray, light black, I don't know, but it's really pretty. It's classic, you know, it's gonna age really nicely. And I decided to do all the top stitching with gray top stitching thread, so that's nice. Otherwise, you can use lighter fabrics, medium weight fabrics. I wouldn't go too light, so I think a rayon twill would be really nice, a tencel twill, maybe a wool crepe. Fabrics have a little bit more flow to them. They will work as well, and if I made one for myself, I would definitely choose one of these fabrics. But I'm very happy with how this one looks on me also with the structured fabric. So you can choose either or, it just depends on what you want for your jacket. The size range is pretty good, goes from size extra small to 7X, and that goes up to a hip of 63 inches. It does say here though that the drafting is based on a height of 5'6" and a B cup. So I guess in essence it was designed for a woman, but it can work for a man. But I wouldn't worry about that B cup being there because there's no bust shaping or waist shaping, hip shaping, nothing that is going to make it impossible for a man to wear. It's a straight piece, front and the back are straight. So what the chest measures is exactly what the hip measures, and those are the two that you need to take into account to choose your size. I measured my son and he fell into the size large. Now when I measure myself, I fall into a size extra large. The jacket at size large fits me fine. It's just got less ease than intended, but it's still fine. It's like I would like to wear it. You know, they say that oversized things are trending and whatnot. I do watch a lot of fashion content online and in general. I always have. I tend to consume that type of content for general knowledge. And at the back of my mind, I just want to know what's trending so that I can not sew what's trending. I know it's going to be completely the opposite of what you hear most people say, because most people want to sew the things that are trending. But I really want to stay away from the trends. Usually I want things that are classic and that are going to work for me no matter what the trends are. Oversized boxy things, you hear a lot they're trending, but I don't really take that into account. I do prefer a slightly closer fit. I don't mind the boxy design, but I don't want it to be super oversized. So I think if you think a little like me, sizing one size down, you will be happier. That's just my opinion. With the height, as I mentioned, it was drafted for 5'6". Depending on where you are, genetics, you know, the height of men can vary a lot. So I think 5'6" would be a pretty standard size in Chile for men. My husband's taller. My son's 6'1" at the moment. I knew that I needed to consider the length of the sleeves. The length of the jacket, because there's a shorter and a longer option, I wasn't too worried about that. That's really easy to customize, and he wanted it almost at the full hip or sort of covering his bottom a little. So I knew that was easy. But the sleeve, I didn't want to make a mistake and him end up with a really short sleeve, because that's not cool. So because this is a drop shoulder, in the pattern they tell you to measure from your armpit down. That's how they give you the finished garment measurements of the sleeve. And I determined there, just to be on the safe side, to add 2 inches to the sleeve. He's growing. Oh my gosh, he's 15 only. I know he has a bunch to grow. So I wanted to have that little bit of extra there. You know, right now if he wants to wear it folded, it fits fine. But if he wants to unfold that cuff, I know in the future it's gonna be the right length for him if he grows even more. Because I added 2 inches, I didn't want to add it just in one place because I didn't want to distort my sleeve. So I did use the shorten and lengthen line to add 1 inch, but then I added another shorten and lengthen line a little above just to get a shape that's a little more smooth. About the sewing, it's a super nice, enjoyable sew. It's not hard at all. I already have a video showing you how to sew the collar and the facing area, so don't worry about that. That's really easy. And in this segment here, I'm going to show you a summary because the complete sewing from start to finish is on Patreon. So what you'll see here are the pattern pieces, the extra yoke, how I sewed that in, and what I've promised is how to sew the sleeve on the flat. And we're going to do it in several stages, meaning that there's going to be no overlap of seam allowances being sewn together there, which will give you a really nice result inside. So let's see. Here are all the pattern pieces for the Ilford jacket. I am making it as per the original except for one thing. This is the front. There are several pocket options, so I have 2 chest pockets there, and the flaps are the rounded ones. For these we have 2 pairs. One of them is interfaced, and for the other one I'm just using a lightweight cotton shirting just to reduce the bulk right there. This is not interfaced, just the main fabric is. And at the bottom we have the same type of pocket. It's just much larger as you can see, but it's the same shape. And I also have the same flaps that are rounded, one layer interfaced, one not interfaced. This is the collar piece. The one that you can see on the top has white interfacing, and the layer that's on the bottom is not interfaced. Then here we have the sleeve right there underneath. This is a tower placket. I have 2 of these. They are both interfaced. I've marked in blue the little rectangle, and whenever you do a tower placket like that, you need to make sure you're putting it on the right part of the sleeve. So on this side you'll see the double notches. Always these details are on the back part of the sleeve. There are 2 notches here on this side only, so there's no way you could end up with a tower placket on the front part of your sleeve, you know. And here we have cuffs. These cuffs, one is interfaced, one isn't. There is also another option of a sleeve that's just a much wider, longer, and it just finishes with a regular hem, so that is an easier option for the sleeve, but I'm making the one that has the most details. Here is the back, and mine is a little bit different. It is actually just a single piece, and it has the shape of the neckline on the top where the collar is going to be. But just to add a little bit of interest to the jacket, I just cut it and added a yoke piece. Cut my paper and added the seam allowance to this side and to that side, and now I'm going to have a yoke piece that I'm going to top stitch. I want the yoke to not be on the fold like the back, because this is on the fold. So I also added seam allowance here at the center back. So I'm going to have a seam going down the yoke. It's just decoration basically. Remember, I had made myself my own back yoke piece. Well, this is what it looks like. This is the rest of the back. This is on the fold. And so I'm just going to put this together. Basically, this was where the fold was supposed to be. I drew a red line there so I could see my stitching line, and I added 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I plan to press these open, so I have already serged them separately. If you're just doing the regular back, then ignore all of this, because then you will just have a completed back. Because I want to top stitch this flat, I'm just going to keep it simple and just top stitch 1/4 of an inch from the seam on either side. I'm going to go down and then back up. Now I'm going to take the rest of my back piece. I have marked the center with a pin there, and then I'm going to take my yoke and put it right sides together there, matching this center seam with a pin. It'll be the same size everywhere. I'll just do a horizontal seam here. The same seam allowance, 5/8. It's what I added when I decided to create this yoke. And after sewing this horizontal seam, we can go ahead and serge it. When I serge it, I'm going to end up trimming it off anyway to about 3/8. There is the seam sewn and serged. I'm going to push the seam allowance going down, and then I can do some top stitching. I've changed my presser foot and my thread again, and I'm just going to sew on the edge first and then go again at 1/4 of an inch from that one. So this is my blind hem presser foot with the needle to the left. I'm going to change this presser foot to the 1/4 inch presser foot to do the second parallel row. Okay, here's the neckline, and I'm actually going to stay stitch this. I'm also going to stay stitch these 2 necklines for the front. Okay, after stay stitching the neckline, I'm just going to sew these shoulder seams together. After sewing these, I'm also going to serge them and top stitch in the same way you saw me do with the yoke. 2 rows. Now I'm going to top stitch the shoulders. The seam allowance is pressed towards the back. I have the jacket extended here. These are the 2 front pieces, that's the back. Now we need to serge from there all the way over there on both sides. Here you can see the sleeve pieces, and I've also serged the edges there already. So all the edges are finished before we sew the sleeves in on the flat. Okay, here is one of the sides. This is the shoulder seam there. This is my yoke seam that is totally optional. So this is the back and this is the front. And along the front you'll find the dot there. That is where the sleeve is supposed to finish. And there is a single notch. Down here is the double notch. You can see the distance I left before cutting out my yoke there. It's about 1.5 inches, and then here is the dot there. So just take the sleeve that will match that. The sleeve there has a single notch That will match the shoulder seam there, and you have your double notch there. So we'll just put these right sides together and align everything. Okay, so there is a sleeve pinned. Now here's the dot, and we're gonna sew from dot to dot, so we're gonna have a little bit loose there on both sides. Pretty much a straight seam. Okay, after sewing the sleeves in on the flat, I have folded everything right sides together, and now we need to sew the sleeve. But it's not a continuous seam like you usually do in knits, so we're not going to sew the whole seam and then pivot and keep going. I'll show you what happens right there. Okay, so here is the sleeve seam. These are separate, and remember we had a dot, and actually this is loose right here. So we need to push the seam allowance of the actual jacket away. Just push it towards the jacket. The dot is right there where you finish that seam. So I'm going to sew exactly from the dot and this way. And that's how I'm going to finish both sleeves. Then when that's done, then we flip the seam allowance out of the way again, and we start on the dot here and pick up and sew the side seam. This is going to ensure that in this area you're not going to have a really bulky seam because the seam allowances won't be sewn in. Okay, so here we have one sleeve. This is the seam allowance of the sides that's still loose, so just keep that out of the way so we don't sew on top of it. And the seam allowance of the sleeve, just push it all away. You can see where we started and stopped the seam where the dot was on the pattern. We're going to start exactly there, just sewing these two layers, not catching any of the seam allowances from here to the bottom. Okay, so you can see where that seam starts right there. All the seam allowances are free, so that's good. We just repeat on the other side now. Okay, and now to sew the side seam, we push the seam allowance away again, and you can see the dot is there, the red dot. We start on the dot here and just sew from the here down, just the side seams, not catching any of these seam allowances. You can see that for straight seams like this, you don't even need to put pins because the fabric sort of just sticks to each other. It's really nice. I want to show you what this looks like. It's like an intersection of seams. Side seams are there, the sleeve comes from within, but you can see that all this is loose there and there's an intersection of seams. I think this will make this area more flexible and of course less bulky because none of these bunch of layers have been sewn in any way, which would have happened if you did this, pivoted and then kept going. You would have sewn through all these layers and then it would end up being super uncomfortable. Say hello to YouTube.
Hello.
I tried to convince my son to show it to you. He wasn't having any of that. It'll be lucky if I ever get him to talk on camera again. Anyway, here is his Ilford jacket. I love it. You know, he hasn't been allowed to wear it for all these months, waiting for me to make this video. So now I'm going to give it to him for sure. And it's so nice. I mean, this collar was so easy to sew. I kept the top stitching in just one row there just to make it look nice and clean. Integrated facing that is just folded under there, very easy. It took me ages to find appropriate buttons. All my buttons had features on them that made them look a little too feminine, like they would have been buttons that work for me. I wanted basic matte buttons, which was so hard to find. All the black buttons I was finding, they were all shiny, and I definitely knew he wouldn't want shiny buttons, so I was able to find matte buttons. You need buttons that are quite chunky, anywhere from 1 to 1.5 inches. I think these are 1.25 inches, so these are good. Look, I still have friction pen marks from doing my buttonhole markings. So there's a lot of buttons going all the way down. These are the pocket shapes that he chose with these angles right here. And you could have had a flap that was straight here, rectangle, but he chose the curved one. To avoid bulk, the inner layer here of the flaps, I just use a black cotton shirting. So I don't have 2 layers of denim right there. All these pockets are functional. It's for my son. I know he's going to put stuff in there. Men don't carry a handbag usually. So he can put stuff in there and on both sides. You know, if the jacket was for me, there's no way I would have put chest pockets on there. And then the size of them is pretty good. He can fit his phone there. So 2 pockets there on the hips. It's just super straight down, like there's no shaping there. Here are the sleeves. You can see it's a drop shoulder, and this is one of the options with the button placket. Look, don't worry if you want to try this button placket. The technique is so easy. It's so easy. It's easier than others I've done, and I really enjoyed it. So you're not going to have a problem, I promise you. It's really nice. I really enjoyed it. And then you have a cuff. And all of this is simple here at the bottom. There's no pleats or anything like that. It's just narrower here at the bottom. And of course you have the other type of sleeve that is wider and just finishes with a regular hem. You can do that one if you don't want to try this, but I suggest you try it. It's nice. At the back there should be nothing here, but I have this yoke right there and it's been top stitched. I did do a center seam and I top stitched that as well. This doesn't change the fit at all, it's just decoration. I wanted something at the back. I just thought it was just too plain to just have one whole pattern piece. If I made this for myself in a print, for example, I wouldn't do this. I would just do the original one. Look, if you wanted to go the extra mile and you wanted to bind your seams to give your jacket that extra elevated technique, you can do it the same as I did with the moss jacket that you can see in the previous video. So you can definitely do that, but this is just denim. It's for my son. He doesn't need all the extra binding. So here you can see the sleeve, and this is where we get all that intersection of seams. We were sewing the sleeve first and leaving the seam allowance here free, and then sewing this part of the sleeve but leaving the seam allowance free, and then picking up again from the same dot and then sewing down. So there is a dot there, and all of this is sewn in 3 stages. So none of that business of where you sew and pick up all the seam allowance, pivot and go down, and then you get all this bulk that you have to snip into. There's none of that with this technique, and I love it. I love this technique that the Ilford jacket has. It's just perfect, and it's the way I would do any jacket like this, and it's the way I've sewn the previous jackets as well, because they have a similar feature like this with the sleeves, and it makes all the difference here. This is so nice here. There's no bulk. It's just a whole bunch of intersections here, but no seam allowance has been sewn. You'll see it on my son as well. I just wanted to show you the details. I have more patience to show you all the features on. It's a good length for me at the full hip. I have my cuff folded there. It's really nice. I've got it over a pair of linen pants, some boots, a little scarf. I think it's a great style, very casual, lots of pockets, and you'll see the details up close. I can button up mine. I still have some ease at the hips, but I would definitely always just wear this open like I wear all my jackets. I definitely have room for 1 layer underneath, and here on the side you can see the patch pocket on the hip. There are other options and other shapes that you can add. This is just the one that my son chose. They are totally functional. You can actually put stuff in here. And then here you can see the sleeve placket. It's very nice with a cuff. Of course, you can just sew a simple sleeve with a normal hem. And at the top, you can button up this collar if you wanted to, but I never do that. So I'll just wear mine open. Sewing the collar is so easy, and I have a video on the channel showing you how to do that. There is the chest pocket there. I would wear it just for decoration, but I know my son's gonna put things in there. And there you can see the top stitching on the shoulder and the extra yoke I added just for decoration. There is a closer look at the integrated facing and the collar. It's a very easy technique to sew that looks really neat. Drop shoulder right there. I'm very happy with this. That's how it looks like on me. This is one size down than what I should have made, but let's see it on my son. Okay, here's my son. He did not want to move around that much, so there you go. You can see it's a looser fit on him like it should be, and it's just really nice. He's just got it pair over another pair of jeans and a t-shirt. It's very casual. I know he could wear this for years to come. It's going to age really well. It's got all the pockets he wants to carry all his things. At this point he has the cuffs folded up once, but if he grows any more he can just unfold that and it'll be good. There is a nice look at the back yoke and the hem. It's a very nice jacket, and I'm glad he can finally have it. So I think any project that has a lot of details like top stitching, you might think it's harder to sew than it really is, but this is definitely a very doable jacket. It's not a really hard jacket to sew. Don't let the top stitching fool you into thinking it's harder than it is. It's just top stitching. It's nothing complex. And you know, the presser feet can always help you get really neat results with minimal effort. I'm always swapping my presser feet around, have them handy, and you can for sure make this one. If you're scared of the placket right there, just sew the simple sleeve. For sure, I really like the style. It's nice and casual. Not everything has to be super tailored, it's full of darts and things. You can always find links for all the patterns I share in the description box. Friday Pattern Company does not have an affiliate program. I don't have any financial gain by showing you this. I just like it, and it's finally a pattern that can work for my son that I'm so happy with. Can also work for me, can work for anyone, so that's why I wanted to share. Otherwise, that's all from me today. Have fun sewing. Bye.